In this tutorial I'm going to show you some basic features in Puck CMS. So if you get the source code first at this URL, it's at bitbucket.org/YOHSII Puck, and if you clone the projects, I use Tortoise HG. Okay, so we've got all the files now, and I've opened up the solution in Visual Studio 2013 right here, and you should see two projects. So you've got the core project, which is actually all the code for the CMS. I'm not including the front end. And then you've got your MVC4 web project here, which is where you'd actually build your website. And the only real addition is areas, and you'll see that the admin user interface is in here. So other than that, it's pretty much a bog standard MVC4 project. So let's first take a look at the app start folder. If you look at the route config, you'll see that there are two routes by default. We've got at the bottom, we've got the Puck route, which is a catch-all. See here that it's got a catch-all wildcard, and what that'll do is send a request to the home controller. It can be any controller, to be honest. You can send that to any controller you like. And if we actually take a look at what's going on in that controller, so home controller, it basically just needs a controller that will return Puck, and Puck is an action method, it's a controller action. And you have access to it by inheriting from base controller. So if we actually take a look at, take a peek at what this does, this base controller will actually be found in the core project, and so it basically handles the request. It does things like caching and handles languages and all sorts. It does a bit of profiling as well from debug. Okay, and some logging if there are some errors. But yeah, basically the important route is a catch-all, and it sends things to any controller you want, but by default it's the home controller in your web project. And what that does is it inherits from base controller from the core, from Puck core, and that gives it access to Puck's handling. So that's the important. That's probably the most important thing to mention right off the bat. But there is actually also another route as well, and this is just to give you an example of how you can take control of a path that you set up in the CMS. So if you have a sign up page, and the URL is at the root, /sign up. What you can actually do is, even though that's a page in the CMS, you can still kind of do processing for that page. You can send it to your own controller. So you can say send it to the sign up controller. This is in case you want to handle forms or do anything custom. So you can have a CMS path like sign up, and you can first have it go to your controller, your own custom controller. So in this case, it will go to the sign up controller here, and you still have access to the current path. So you can say current node equals queryhelper, and you can cast it to whatever type you need it to be, and you can say get the current node. Now getting the current node will get the most up-to-date version of the page in the current language. And if you want to get all the revisions, and that will be all the current revisions, so that will be the latest revisions, but in all languages from the database, then you can use this command here. You can say get current revisions by path, and you can get the path prefix as well, because if you've got a multi-site website, then you'll have a prefix for your different sites, and then you can just pass it the absolute path, and this will get you all the current revisions. So the difference between current node and current revisions is that current node comes from a Lucene index, and current revisions is from the SQL database. So now that you have the data, you can do your processing however you like. For example, current node dot. You'll have all the properties of the type that you've passed it to, and you can handle any custom processing. Once you're done, you can just say return base.puck, because this controller, your custom controller, will again have to inherit from puck core controller's base controller, and this means that puck will then process the request and send it to the correct template. So you get best of both worlds. You get to do custom handling for a particular path, but then you get to seed the processing back to the CMS as well. So the next thing I want to do really is just to run this, and you can then get an idea of the models that have been set up by default. In fact, we'll quickly take a look at the models that we have in here, the view models. Sorry, and there is a slight kind of difference here between view models and models. So the way I like to look at things is that a view model represents an entity in your website. So it could be a home page, or a page, a section, and a folder, and a model will be the building blocks of a home page. So if a home page had complex types as part of its properties, then you want to put those building blocks, those complex type building blocks, in models, and then reference them in your view model. So that's kind of the distinction I've used: view models and models in the CMS. So for example, we can look at page. Now page, this all comes as part of just the default stuff that you get with the CMS, and it just gives you an idea of how to use the CMS. Now it looks it might look a little bit scary at first, with all the properties and stuff, but most of these things are really basic MVC properties. You've got required, you've got display name, and which will be what it will look like in the CMS editor, the name that's used, and then really this is one of the most important puck attributes. You're just giving it information here about how Lucene should handle this field. So you could say, okay, this field should be analyzed, and then you can give it the type of analyzer. You can use your own custom analyzer if you like, and if you don't supply this information, the attribute will just use defaults. So yeah, I mean you've got here page is the name of the view model, and it's going to be sort of our bottom level model that all other pages on the site are based on. So it's going to have meta keywords, meta description, it's going to have a title, main content, and here I've told it to use, given it a UI hint for a rich text editor, and it really is, it really is as simple as giving it a UI hint if you want a different type of editor to be used in CMS. This is very much, CMS is very much based on MVC, so it should be intuitive for any MVC users. And here you've got you've got puck image, which really is just a complex type here that you set up, and an image will have path, description, size, extension, width, height, and the HTTP posted file. And of course, it could have anything you want in there. So we undo these changes, and if I just run this, you have to excuse me if it's a little bit slow. I'm running this on boot camp and on Parallels, and I haven't actually set up a great deal of resources for this virtual machine. Okay, so it's showing the template for the home page, and we'll take a look at that in a moment. But if we go into the back office, we hit admin. Maybe I should log out to show you that there is actually a login page. Okay, so by default the username and password are admin. You probably should change that right away. You can go into the users section and you can edit that. Please don't spam my email. Okay, and so this is the back office. If we take a look at the home page, for example, you can see first of all that we have multiple routes, and not all of them are actually viewable. So if we take a look at home JP, which just stands for Japan, you'll see that a domain has been set up for it, and so if you hit this domain, you'll get to this route. So this is a way to have multiple sites. So you can. This is a multi-site CMS. And if we go to Home UK, you can see that it's set up for wildcard. So you'll just get that as a route if it's basically our default site. And if you go to images, you'll see that we don't have a domain mapping here at all. So images is more to just store data. It's not actually going to be visible on the front end because we haven't set a domain for it. I can just get rid of this because we don't need it. Okay, so if we expand Home UK, you can see there are some other pages here. Now sign up is the example I gave before. The sign up is a page in the CMS, but it's actually also got a there we go. Okay, so yeah, here's the sign up controller that we talked about earlier, and here's the page for it. So by default, this has a template page CSS.html, but because I've set up a controller and a route as well to hijack it. So this is the sign up route, and it should now, if I try and view this, oh, of course, I'm not actually at the front end of the site, so I need to go to the front end like this, and you'll see that this breakpoint has been hit. You notice that it didn't hit the breakpoint when I tried to preview it, because when you're previewing, you don't actually hit the it works differently through preview just to save my breath a little bit. Okay. Yep, and there's nothing really much going on here. It's just to prove that you can hijack pretty easily anyway, that's pretty boring. So let's get back to the rest of the CMS. You'll see that there's a news page here, and you can see that there are various fields. There's this geocode editor here. These are simple, single line or multi-line editor templates, and there are some tabs here. So there's content, more content on this tab, like title and rich text editor for main content. There's an image you can update, and in the default tab we've got just a whole bunch of just standard fields. And yeah, you can preview. All works pretty nicely. It's pretty straightforward. You can also have translations. So how that works is if you click on translations or translation, it will show you what languages you've got available that haven't been that you haven't kind of translated this current piece of content to. And in this case, it's only Japanese because there's already an English version for this, but there's no Japanese version. So if I went ahead and created a Japanese version, I could say soda fracking. Whoops. JP, just to distinguish it for now. I'll just add JP to it. And let's hit update. Content updated. So now I've got a Japanese version. It's in red because it hasn't been published. And there's the English version, which is the original version there. And it's red on the left-hand side in the tree, just to show you that you've got some language variant of it that hasn't been published. Yeah, so you can search for stuff. You can search for specific things or all things. You can set a search route. If I search for Croydon, probably add a spinner to this. But yeah, you can see there's two different variants. There's an English version, there's a Japanese version. Let's click on the English version. Yeah, it brings it back pretty nicely. You can update or you can publish. So if we actually hit publish on this, we'll see that the red is gone, and we get a little notice saying that the content's been updated, which is great. So now I want to show you, well, since I've mentioned languages, I should probably show you the settings area. And yeah, you've got your languages here. You can drag, if you want them shown in the dialogues in a different order, you can drag them to be in that order, or you can add a new language, whatever. You can set up your redirects. I'll probably find a different place to put this in the future, but you can set from and to, or you can just you can set up your kind of manually set up to if you want, if you don't want to redirect internally. You can organize fields into groups. This is how tabs work. So if you noticed here, there are tabs. So there's meta, content, and default. That actually has been set up in the settings area. So if I go to the page type, you can see that there's a group, and there's different fields, and you can set the order of the fields and stuff. The reason this is grayed out is because these are inherited, so you don't get to modify the inherited types. You have to go to that inherited type to modify that. So there you go. You see that's all coming from base model. But if I go to page, only the stuff that's been specified in the page type will turn up here. I can add a new group if I want. I can say media, and I've got a new group here, and I can add stuff to it if I can manage to drag. So yeah, that's how tabs work in this. You can set what templates you're allowed as well. So you can say for folder, you've got these excluded templates, these allowed templates, and you can just drag them one to the other side. So I can add that to there. Allowed child models for a given model. So, for example, under homepage, if I try and create, I can create all these types. If I wanted to limit that, if I under homepage only wanted to create, so here you can choose what type you want to be able to create under another type. If you haven't set, if by default everything's in excluded, but how it will work is if you haven't actually chosen to have anything in your allowed list, it will just assume that everything is allowed. So yeah, I should probably rename excluded and allowed, but whatever. So editor parameters. This is if you're making editors. I don't want to get into this just yet, but we can get into it later. Cache policy. So you can set the output caching for each type, and you can set that in minutes. And how this works is that if you actually set this on a base type, it will affect all child types. But then you can be more specific in your child type. And for example, if I set this in base model, which is the base model for all types that you create, all view models you create will inherit from base model. So they will also inherit the cache time, the output caching time. But if you want to override that, you can actually just go to that particular view model and set something different, and that will override it. Orphan models. This really is to help you recover data if you lose it. It will be handy for developers. I won't explain exactly what it does just yet. So yeah, this is the settings page, and it needs to be tidied up a bit. But you can do most things in there in a moment. Just before we look at the front end to see what you can do with your actual templates, we'll take a look at the developer section, because in here you can actually, if you're in a bind and you really want to quickly edit your templates, you can do them from within here. I don't recommend it, but it is possible just as a quick fix, and you can actually inspect models. So in here it's figured out that this is it's the homepage model that you're interested in, because you're on the homepage template, and it actually figures this out because you've got a model declaration here. So that's how it figures it out. It's not magic. So yeah, you can insert fields, or you can go deeper into them and inspect fields here, and you can insert, or you can look at all models as well. So you can go into another model and take a peek, and and if there are fields that you can actually iterate over, it will give you an iterate option as well. So yeah, it's just a very basic editing feature for your templates. You can delete, you can move templates, you can create either templates or folders. So so if I hit create, you can put your template name there, and you can choose what model it uses. So you can actually generate models as well. If you're not happy creating your view models here, view models. Oh, oops, I'm in the wrong part. I was in the core project. Not bad. So if you're not happy creating view models as classes, you can actually create your view models here, and they'll be compiled, and you can add fields. So here you can actually take a look at the source as well. So if I hit view source, you can see that this is actually just the class that's been generated on the fly, and you can use it like any other. You can use it like any of your other view models that you've got under here. You can add properties, so I could say add property, and it will give me a preview of the type as well. So if I say picker, content picker, and if I pick the content picker type, picker, then it will actually give me a preview that's fully functional, so you get an idea of what you're creating. And you hit create, that will be added as a property here, and a property can have options. So what an option is an option is actually an attribute. So here I've got a generated string property, and it's got a regex option, and you can edit it. This is a crappy regex rule, but it's just to show you how it works. So if I hit view source here, you can see that there is an attribute for reg expression, and there's a field here, generated string property, with the display name of whatever you set the actual name to be here. So yeah, you can actually generate classes, and you can use them as a normal class. So here, generated class, and if I hit create, I've got all the fields that I've chosen. They haven't been tidied up and made into different the fields haven't been separated into different tabs, but you can do that by going into options. So that's what generated models does. Tasks is something that needs to be worked on, so I'd rather not talk about that just yet. But yeah, this is it for the back end for now. Feel free to. Oh, okay. I should probably mention as well that you can set default localization for any element in the tree, navigation tree. So this is the default culture is English, and you've got the languages that you've got set up for your site listed here. And it just means that if you've got multi-language content, translated content in your tree, then this localization option is what's used to show you the default language. What language will be shown by default when you hit a particular URL, even though that URL may have multiple translations. And it's kind of, you can override it as well. So I can at a later further down the tree, I can decide that I want news to have a different default localization. So it's all overrideable, and you can get more specific as you go down the tree. So you can have different parts of your site with different default localizations. Although I don't know why you do that over having something like multi-site. But it's up to you. You can have multi-site, multi-language via one-to-one translations. It's completely up to you. The API supports all of it. It just depends on how you want to build your site. So if I quickly show you a template, so if we take a look at the home page again, so this home page, it represents this content here. So we've got access to all these bits of content. We've got some carousel items that are just being linked from the images folder, which is actually this folder here. And yeah, we've got all our default properties as well. So you can see that the home page CS.html is what's been set as a template. So if we actually go to that in our views folder, and if we go to home and homepage CS.html, then you can see that template's very straightforward. You've got I'm setting the view bag title, is not really important. These are all actually just examples of how to use the query helper, and query helper is really cool because it allows you to basically build a Lucene query, but in like a strongly typed sort of way, and in a way that gives you access to cool cool queries like getting descendants and only filtering current language and making sure it's explicit type, because what that means is that the type it will only return the type you specifically asked for when you've instantiated the query helper. Otherwise, what will happen by default is that it will get any type that can be casted to the type that you mention here. So if you've got a particular type with some a particular type that lots of other view models inherit from, then you'll find that you'll receive all of those view models as a result. But if you hit explicit type, you'll only get the type that you asked for. So yeah, you can build your query. You can actually ask for a specific field. So I can say field, and it will give me autocomplete for the type that I've set. So I can say title, and I can give it a value here. I can say, let's say I want it to start with TI, and I can put wildcard afterwards, wildcard multi, So the API is pretty it's pretty powerful. There's lots of things for you to mess around with, and you should be able to get whatever content you need to get in a really straightforward way, and in a way that's strongly typed as well. So all these, this is an example of how to get the sections that are in the site, like news and events. If you look here, there's news, there's events, and this is an example of how to just do a search, a text search. You could say search is a new query helper of type page. You only want to search the current route, because you have multiple. You can have multi-sites in a single installation, and so you want to be specific to what site that you're currently working with. And you can say search all fields for the search query, and then only get the ones that are current language. That's really powerful, and you can just search your entire site, and then you can see how many results. So you can say search for search query yielded this number of results, and that's kind of what I'm doing here. I'm saying search for Croydon gave me a hit of one article. And geoquery. So this actually supports geoquery. So you can say within miles or within kilometers, and you can give the field that you're searching for. So I know that in this type, in the page type, there's a field called location, and it has latitude and longitude values. And so that's what I'm going to search for. That's the field I'm going to search against. Sorry. And then you just give your values here and the miles, within kind of what radius, I guess. And you'll get, you can get your results. It's really straightforward. But the cool thing is when you're actually using the data that comes from the current node that you're editing, the current node is actually set as your model, because we've got the model declaration at the top here, and you've given it your view models namespace and whatever the name of your model is, homepage in this case, and it just means that you've got access to all of your fields in a strongly typed way. So you don't need to say get property and then give it a string value for the name of the property. Just cumbersome and kind of error prone when you've got a lot of properties to remember and on a lot of different types. You might have a typo, casing mistake, whatever. This is strongly typed. You get autocomplete. I know the fields that I have in this type. It's very easy to use, and then and everything works in the same way. You can sort of just do everything in a strongly typed way, and it means that it just means that you've got really clean code. You can get the URL by doing that. Really clean, simple code, and you can highlight stuff as well. You can highlight so for example, the search query that we did earlier, I can iterate through the results, and I can say, give me the title of that search result. But then I can also I can spit out the main content here, and I can highlight, because highlight is an extension method that you get with the CMS, and you can pass it the search query and it will highlight things nicely for you. Of course, your CSS style sheet can decide how that highlight should be styled, because what it does is it surrounds things in with a span and a search highlight class. So just helper methods, you can build your own in there, but it's just to show you what's possible. So yeah, that's how the templates work. Okay, so we're back in the back office. A couple of features I want to just point out. So you can set notifications, and maybe you just want edit and move. So these are notifications for different events that happen for content. You can choose the events you're interested in, and you can choose to who gets the notifications, and also if it's recursive or not. So if you hit recursive, then you'll get all of the nodes underneath the one that you're editing. So this is being set for the UK homepage. If I hit recursive, that means I'll be notified for all content underneath. Probably, maybe what you want to do sometimes, maybe not. I don't know, but it's up to you. And another option is another feature is the revert feature. So you've got all your revisions here, descending order of revision number, and you can then compare. So here you're comparing the current revision to this revision here, and the green fields indicate that nothing's changed, and you'll have red fields to show you stuff has changed. If you want to revert, you can do so, but we don't want to do that now. So the next thing I want to show you is, if we go back to settings, you'll notice that there is the editor parameters I mentioned earlier. So there's only one thing that you can pick here, and this is the editor parameter settings for the puck picker. Now, puck picker is just an editor template. It's a type of editor that you might want for some of your content. What this does is it allows you to save settings for your editor templates against the different models, and against specific properties. So that means that an editor can behave differently depending on what model the user's editing it on. So you might want the puck picker to behave differently when a user's editing a home page, and then another way when the user's editing just a regular page. You can even be more specific and say that you want it to behave differently depending on what field they're editing. So if the puck picker was set to be on the node name field, then it can you can tailor your settings for that editor specifically for that scenario. If you select none, then what that means is that the settings will be saved just generally over the model that you selected, and that will affect all fields that you then add the editor on. So just to give you an idea what the puck picker looks like, to remind you, it's a content tab. Homepage. Content. Yeah. Okay. So here's the puck picker, and it just allows you to select different different items, and what can and can't be selected. For example, I can't. Well, there you go. I can select. Looks like I can select just the content itself, or content and specifically a language translation. You see here translation's been added, so you can be less specific or more specific depending on, or both, depending on the settings. You can select only a particular number of items as well, or a specific type, or is it published or not? Are you allowed to select stuff that's not published? So all the behavior for this editor is actually set in the editor parameters. So how this would work is, I could say for the homepage model, edit. So here I get to edit the different parameters for this particular editor. So I can tell it what start path to show content from. I can say how many items are you allowed to pick maximum, what selection type, meaning do you want to select just the node itself, or do you want to make it so that you have to include the language, so they have to select specifically the language translation that they want, or will you allow both? Do you want to allow unpublished content, yes or no? And do you want duplicates? So yeah, maybe you want duplicates. I don't know why you want that, but so these are your settings, and you can update those as you see fit. So just to show you what that looks like, what the actual editor template looks like for the puck picker. If you go to areas, admin, views, shared, editor templates, you'll see that the puck picker has its own editor template here. And what it does is, in this first line here, it's actually getting a settings object. And how it does that is it uses this extension method that comes with puck, and it's saying this dot puck editor settings, and then you pass the type that you expect to get back. So in this case, I'm expecting puck picker editor settings. And what this does is it actually figures out what model you're editing, what field you're currently editing, and then it will check that there is editor settings for the type that you've requested as well, and it will return that back, or it will return null. And if it's null, then you can instantiate what you want your default settings to be. And default settings here for me are allow duplicates false. So yeah, no duplicates. Allow unpublished, max pick of 2, selection type of both, and start path is null. So you want to start from the root. What this allows you to do is it gives you a settings object which you can then reference in the rest of your editor. So this is just a standard MVC editor template. You've got the markup for it here. You can see I'm using the view data model metadata property name, which is it will give you the unique name of that particular field. And here I've included the script in line. You don't have to do that. You probably want to organize your stuff in a folder hierarchy, your editor templates, and you can include your JavaScript in a separate file and all that good stuff. But you can also have it in line if you can't be bothered. So you can use the onAfterDOM method, which is part of the puck JavaScript API. What that does is it just it fires once the editor page is fully loaded up. So you can see here that we're referencing the settings object for our various options. So max pick is settings max pick, and it's just a really neat way to have settings that you can configure for different content. So you can have one editor that can behave in many different ways depending on the context. Yeah, I would suggest looking through these editors so you can see how they're built. It's pretty straightforward stuff. And just to show you what the editor model is, it's actually just a class. It's just a class, and it implements this interface iPuck editor settings, and apart from that, it's just a standard model like you'd have in MVC. So this is literally just a model of all the fields that I want to to have configurable. And as long as you make sure that you implement that interface, then the CMS will be able to pick it up and list it here as an editable class. And so I hope you can see what the power of this kind of approach is. It just allows you to build powerful editors in a really simple way. The next thing I want to cover is how media is handled in Puck. So in the homepage node, you'll see that in the content tab you've got an image here, and it's got this weird path, /media. This isn't a standard thing. This is something you can configure. You can choose how everything is processed in Puck, because you actually have access to the processing pipeline. So if we actually look at the homepage view model, you'll see that it inherits from page. So let's go to page, go to definition, and we're looking for the image. So where's the image? Here it is. So the image is of type Puck image. It doesn't have to be this. It could be whatever. It could be your own image class. But if we go to models, you'll find Puck image there. And this is just a standard class with a bunch of attributes. You'll see that it's got the HTTP posted file base as one of its properties, but it's also got width, height, the path, description, size, extension, all this stuff. And the interesting thing is the attribute at the top of this model, and it's got Puck image transformer. Now, if we go to transformers, you'll notice that there's this custom transformer here. Now, transformers allow you to modify how data is indexed and how data is stored. So how it's indexed in Lucene and how it's stored in a database. You can modify all of that from within a transformer, and it's just a good opportunity for you to hijack the processing of anything that's been saved. So in this instance, I've got a Puck image transformer, which it's an attribute because it needs to be added to properties. But it also implements the iProperty transformer interface, and this is the input I'm expecting to come into the transformer, and this is the output I'm going to return from the transformer. So I get in a Puck image and I return a Puck image, and in between, I actually modify. I can modify the content of what I get. So here I've got a transform method that returns type Puck image, and it needs to return a type Puck image because that's what I've set the return the output type to be in the interface. And the transform method will receive the model, whatever model is currently being edited, and it will receive it in base model type, and it will also get the property name passed through, and it will get the unique key passed through as well. So what a unique key is, or U-key is the property name, but with the index number appended to it if it happens to be an item that's in an array. So if it's in an array, and you'll get the property name, and then you'll get the square brackets with the index of the array as well, and that will be your unique key. and then the final parameter is actually what's passed in. Is the type that you expect as input, the one that you specified in your in this argument here, this type argument in your interface. So I'm expecting a puck image as my input, so that's the type that I've set as my input there. So here I can check that the file isn't null. So this is this property here, the HTTP posted file base, and if it's null, or if the file name is empty, I can return null, do nothing basically. Returning null just means that it won't be processed by puck. If a field is null, it actually gets ignored in the indexing and storing stage, so nothing happens. Otherwise, I can actually choose what I can make a file path here, and it's entirely up to you what you use to store your media in a unique way. And you don't have to store it in the local file system. I'm doing that here because it's just really easy, but you can use this transformer to store it in the cloud, store it wherever you need it to be. So in this case, what I'm doing is I'm setting a local file path, and for it to be in the media folder. So that's this folder here, and then I'm gonna save it using this pattern where I've got the ID of the content that I'm editing, the language, the unique key, and then the file name. So that gives me a unique place to store each media item. As you can see, it gives you this kind of pattern here. So that's all cool. I can get the absolute file path, and I can create a directory if it doesn't exist, and I can save that, and then I can actually save the path that I've saved it to my path field in my you see that there's the path field here in your puck image model, and you can set the size, extension. You can do whatever processing you need to be done, like setting all these computed fields and whatnot. You can do all of that here, and again, you can store this wherever you want. It doesn't have to be on the file system. And after you've done your processing, you can return the object that you are editing, and that's that. You can handle media in this really cool way. By just having a HTTP posted file base property in your model. So yeah, you can hijack the processing of any field by doing this, by adding a transformer. And what I'll do now actually is I'll look for any other examples of there being transformers being used. So if you go to base model, there's another transformer for datetimes. Datetimes use the date transformer, and a date transformer is a lot simpler. It just takes in a date time and returns a string. And again, the transform method gets all the parameters that you expect. You get the base model passed in. You get the model you're editing basically, but casted as base model. You get the property name, unique key, and you get the date time that you're expecting as your input. And what you're doing here is you're just making you're returning a string. You're formatting the date time, and Lucene will store it in this format. So it's easier to sort by date. So yeah, you can change how things are indexed for your convenience in terms of how you want them to be searched. Transformers can be used for all kinds of things, and it just allows you to change how things are indexed and how they're stored. And I just want to point out there is a difference between indexing and storing. There are two levels of storage in this CMS. Things go in the Lucene index, but they also go in a database as well. And in this instance, you're not changing how things are stored in a database because you're not actually changing any reference properties. you're not changing any reference properties here, so you're not going to change how they're stored, but you will change how this is indexed, because you're returning here as your argument, what you want this property to be indexed as. If you actually want to change how things are stored, then what you need to do is, like in the example of the puck image, you want to set the transformer to be at your model level. So you see here the image transformer is set on the actual this class level here, whereas this date transformer is set at the property level, right? The difference is, if you want to change how things are stored, not how things are indexed. If you want to change how things are stored, then you need to set the transformer to be at the class level, because what that does is that actually allows you, because it passes in the entire class, it allows you to change references. So here I'm changing the path reference, so because I'm actually changing properties in here, then that means that I'm changing how those properties will end up being stored. But in the case of the date transformer, I'm not changing any properties, so I'm not changing how things are going to be stored. I'm only changing how the property that I've set this transform to be on. For example, the date transformer here has been set for the created property of base model. I'm just changing how that created property datetime is going to be indexed by Lucene. I'm not going to change how it's going to be stored, so I'm not changing any references. So I'm just returning the string that I want to be used by Lucene. So yeah, it's that simple. So have a mess around with transformers, and any questions about transformers, let me know. But it's a cool feature, because in the case of the puck image transformer, HTTP posted file base isn't something that's bound to your models by default in MVC. So I've hacked around to get kind of to get it binding in this sort of way. You can have a view model in puck that's of arbitrary sort of size. You can have a whole tree of complex properties in this view model, and you can have loads of HTTP posted file base properties at different levels, and they all get bound, which is really cool, because then you can set different transformers for them, or you can process them however you want them to be processed. So yeah, I hope that shows how that works, and yeah.